morning. It's really lovely to be here with you today. Here, of course, is my house sitting in my kitchen. For those who don't know me, my name is Ruth, and I've been a member of the church for many, many years. And in my day job, I'm one of the directors for Tear Fund, a Christian relief and development organisation. We are continuing our theme of looking around issues of emotional well-being and thinking about our emotional health in this particular time. Last week, Maggie kicked the series off and she looked at this idea of us being made in the image of God and looked at our identity. Who are we as people? What does it mean to be made in the image of God? And this week I want to continue that, also looking at the image of God, but asking the question, why are we here? Why are we? And that is a question that's a pretty big one at any point in time, but it's one I know that a number of us are particularly wrestling with as we find ourselves in lockdown, with all of the added emotional and psychological stress that can put on us. It's something that I experienced actually right at the start. Up until lockdown, I was going full tilt, running with everything that I believed that God had called me to. Some of you will know that I had written the Archbishop of Canterbury's Lent book. We were looking at it together as a church, and it was going brilliantly. It was an Amazon #1 bestseller, and churches up and down the country were reading it, and my diary was packed full of speaking engagements and so on. And I was feeling like this was the culmination of what God had called me to in the vision that He had given me around encouraging churches to be caring for the whole world. And then suddenly, wham, right in the middle of it, the pandemic occurred, lockdown happened, the rug was just pulled right out from under my feet. And as all my speaking engagements cancelled, the focus went off inevitably and understandably onto other things and so on. I felt like this toddler who'd been happily trotting along and then tripped up and kind of landed on their backside. And I sat there for a while looking around me thinking, what has just happened? And if I'm honest, really went through a period of quite some crushing disappointment. And as I found myself stuck at home instead of being out and about and speaking to people, began to question, why am I here? What's my role during this time? Who am I and why am I here? Earlier this week, I was speaking with one of my team leaders, one of my direct reports, and he was reflecting something similar. As lockdown is continuing, the motivation can be hard sometimes, and I know that he and others are suffering quite some emotional stress as maybe we're dealing with more work than ever, or maybe we're on furlough, maybe our businesses don't have that work in anymore. The things that we're used to being able to do that gave us a meaning and gave us purpose, maybe those things have gone. So why are we? Why are we here? And I found it helpful to come back to that real basic of being made in the image of God. Maggie last week talked about our identity of being made in the image of God. Alongside that, the image of God actually is a job title. It's a function for us to be doing. We have been created to image God. We have been created to reflect Him. God is Trinity. God is relationship. This whole wider world, this whole creation is part of the outpouring of the creative, ever creative generosity of God's love. And we are called to partake in that. to be caught up in God's love and to reflect Him. And there are two directions in which we reflect God. Firstly, we reflect God to other people. One of the really strong things about this idea of us being made in God's image is that of equality. The Babylonian context that the Israelite, that this Genesis narrative was talking into, had in it that only the king was made in the image of God. But Genesis 1 tells us that all people are made in God's image. There's an absolute equality there. And that means that things like poverty and inequality are an absolute abomination to God. Anything that stands in the way of us being treated as equal goes against the plans that God has for us. So at its basic level, why are we here? We are here to value others. We are here to reflect God, to reflect that relational God to other people. So I would encourage you this week, just think through, how could I reflect that value in other people? It might be the people who you're living with, if you have other people in your home with you. It might be your neighbours. It might be your global neighbours. What could you do this week to reflect the fact that all people have value? Is there one act that you could do for someone else? And then secondly, the other direction in which the image of God has its focus is towards the wider natural world. Like I said, this is a job title. We are here to take care of and to look after the rest of what God has made. Some of us have been privileged enough to enjoy that so much. We're loving hearing the birdsong. We're loving the lack of pollution. I stood out on one of the busy roads in Chichester the other day with my youngest daughter. The sun was setting. It was in the centre of town. There wasn't a car there. We stood in the middle of the road. There was silence, except a blackbird singing. And I said to Jemba, appreciate this. We may never have this again. We are learning that our connection with the wider natural world is so important to our well-being. And I would encourage you, as we ask ourselves this question, why are we here? Think this week, is there something that you could do to reflect God to the wider natural world? Is there something that you could do that helps you play your part in taking care of what is around us? This is why we are here. I want to finish with something that the Pope said on Palm Sunday. He said, the tragedy we're experiencing summons us to take seriously the things that are serious and not to be caught up in those things that matter less, to rediscover that life is of no use if not used to serve others. Life is of no use if not used to serve others. For life is measured by love. So as we think this week around issues of our emotional resilience and ask ourselves, why are we here? Let's not worry about those huge issues of calling. Let's just focus down on the basics. We are here, created in the image of God, to love other people, to love the wider natural world, and to love God, and to be rooted in His love for us.